My name is Kazakiel Ben Israel. Welcome to Voices of Our Father. Tonight's topic is the true resurrection. And first off, I'm going to introduce the elder on my right.
I am Elder Aharon Ben Israel. Shalom.
Shalom, elder. And the elder on my left.
I am Elder Shadaniah Ben Israel.
Shalom, elder. So, first off, we want to deal with the misconceptions in the resurrections versus rapture that the church teaches as church doctrine, and we're going to come from a scriptural standpoint so that we can prove where people have made their mistakes so that you won't fall into the same trap. It's been taught throughout Christendom that at a certain point in time that all the saints or Christians shall be raptured away, taken away somewhere to safety until the tribulation is over. But we're here to tell you that's a misconception. We're going to show you scripturally what the Father says about who's going to be put into safety and who's going to be put into destruction. Okay, so Elder Shadaniah, please start us off tonight's topic.
Okay, this has been a very long, hard study, and I understand that the one passage that is in the scriptures that most people go to, especially people in the church who believe in the mid-tribulation rapture, the one scripture that they go to and they always refer to is 1 Thessalonians 4, and I believe it's 16 and 17. Let's go to 1 Thessalonians 4, and let's begin here with verse 13.
Okay.
It says, "But I do not want," and we know that Shaul is the writer here, and Shaul is trying to explain about Yeshua's coming. It says, "But I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep." That means death.
That's right.
"Lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. For if we believe that Yeshua," or Jesus it says here, "died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Yeshua," or it says Jesus. It says, first of all, I've underlined here, it says, "Even so God will," or "even so the Father will bring with him." So if it says bring with him, that tells me that they are somewhere with him. Okay. It says bring with. Bring with. Those are key words right there. Bring with him. Okay. The very next verse, it says, For this we say to you by the word of Yahweh, or by the word of the Lord, it says here. It says that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep.
Right.
Stop. Okay. We've heard that particular verse being read many times, Elder Zakiel. But the one thing that I found that is most important here is that we must always try to understand that there are key words in any verse that we read. There are key words that we ought to look at, and we ought to sometimes contemplate on, and we ought to sometimes do research and understand. Now, in this particular verse right here, it is very important that we underline the word here where it says, we who are alive Then it says, and
Which verse you at?
I'm in verse 15.
Right.
Okay, we who are alive and remain. Now the key word in this particular verse is remain. Remain. I know many people in the viewing audience have read this verse 1,000 times, but have never wondered about this word remain. Now this word remain here is there for a reason. The question is, when it says remain, what does it mean? What is it talking about, remain? First of all, it just said alive and remain. So it's something in addition to being alive that's important here. Okay. 16, it says, for the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. That's what it says. It says, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive, what? And remain. There's it again. There's that word again. And remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord, it says. Therefore, comfort one another with these words. All right. Getting back to this word remain. The word remain right here reflects those people who are alive.
Right.
And those people who have survived an ordeal. Those people who have survived a time of trial or a time of tribulation, could it be? Those people who have gone through a tribulation period and those people who have survived this tribulation period.
That's right.
All right. Let's go directly to Revelation. Now, we know that this thing called the rapture, that they call it, is the rapture of the church, or those who belong to Christ. And we're going to use a lot of the terminology here so that people can understand exactly what we're talking about. So this rapture thing is about the resurrection of those who belong to Christ, or the body of Christ, those who are his. So we're going to see exactly what's being said here. So we know that we're talking about the church here, so to speak.
Right.
All right? All right, we're in Revelation. Let's go directly to the 3rd chapter of Revelation. Now, we know that in the 3rd chapter of Revelation, we know that in the red is the what? Are the words of Christ. Or the words of Yeshua. Okay? We know also that he's speaking to whom, Elder? He's speaking to the churches.
Right.
That's right.
That's right.
Okay, so he has a message for the churches. All right, here in the 3rd chapter, and we'll begin with the 10th verse. He has something to say to this church, to this faithful church, or to this people. It says, because you, church, because you have kept my what?
Patience.
Kept my patience, or my commands, it says, because you have done so, and to preserve, that I also will keep you from the hour of trial which shall come upon the whole world, to test those who dwell on the earth. All right, let's examine that 10th verse right there. Now, what it says right here, key words in this particular verse here is I also will keep. I also will keep. Now, we speak English, and in most cases, when we see the word keep there, it usually means refrain, or I'm going to refrain you from the hour of trial. We know when it says the hour of trial, it's specifically speaking about what? About the tribulation period. Is it not the hour of trial that's going to come upon the whole earth? Yes, it is. Okay. All right. Now, so it says keep. So we normally think of keep as being a word or as being something that is trying to explain here. Yeshua is trying to explain here that I'm going to refrain you from this particular time. Is that really what it means, though? Okay. Ella, will you please do a favor? Would you please look up the word keep in the concordance there, and give me the number of which is used to explain this word keep? Since this is written in what? This is written in Greek, so to speak, and we must go to the Greek dictionary.
Yeah.
And this is important.
All right.
So at the same
Keep.
time, exactly.
Let's do it in
So we
the
know
number.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to do it from Revelation. The number is 5083.
5083. Okay.
Yeah.
5083 in the concordance
Right.
tells us what, Elder? And this is very important because this is how you study a viewing audience.
Yes, it
You
is.
just can't read this Bible, even though it's in English, and take every word for what it means or what you think it means. Because we have to always remember that this was originally written in another language.
Correct.
Because it was written in another language, what that means is we must now practically examine every word for word, and break it down to get the true meaning of the time when it was written. What are they really trying to say? What were they really trying to say during the time that this was written? That's why it's important.
Tre Rio. 5083. Tre Rio.
Tre Rio?
Right. It's spelled T-E-R-E-O.
Okay.
But the way it's pronounced, it's T-A-Y-R-E-H-O.
Okay. And what does that mean, Elder?
It says to guard.
To guard.
From loss or injury.
To guard from loss or injury, viewing audience. It says to guard from loss or injury. Okay.
Right. Then it says properly by keeping the eye upon.
Keeping the eye upon.
And thus differentiating from. Which is properly to prevent escaping. And from 2892, which implies a fortress, a full line of apprentices, to note a prophecy, figuratively to fulfill a command, by implication to detain in custody, figuratively to maintain.
To maintain.
Right. By extent to withhold for personal ends, to keep, hold fast, keep.
To keep.
Right.
Okay, all right. In examining this particular word here, in the true meaning, it appears that the primary meaning here is used to guard, or it says to maintain. Okay. Now, we know that if it says, because you have kept my command to preserve, is I also will guard you, or I will maintain you from the hour of trial that shall come upon the whole earth. Now, I've also looked this word up also. An additional word there, in my finding was that it also means preserve. So it means to guard or protect. To guard or protect the church as it is going through, or to preserve the church as it is going through this hour of trial.
That's right.
See, the race is not given to the swift or to the strong, but it's given to those who endure to the end. And see, when it says, we just read 1 Thessalonians 4 and 13 through 17 or 18, I believe it is. It says those who are alive and remain. Well, those who are alive and remain what? Remain through an hour of trial, could it be, Elder? An hour of trial, an hour of temptation that's going to come upon the whole world where we're going to be tested.
That's right.
And how do we know for sure that that's what it's saying? Because of the very next verse. It says, behold, I am coming quickly. So he says, hold fast what you have, that no one may take your crown.
That's right.
He who overcomes,
Yeah.
I will make him a pillar in the temple of my El, and he shall go out no more. Now, what does this mean? Could this mean, here in 11 he says, behold, I am coming quickly, so hold fast to what you have. If, during this hour of trial, if you're not going to be here, if you're going to be raptured up, elder, then how can someone take what you have?
That's right.
Can anyone take something from you once you've lived this life and you've died and you resurrected, or you've been raptured out of here? Can anyone take from you? No. These are words of encouragement that Yeshua is given to the church to hold fast. So let no one take your glory from you.
Right.
That which I have for you, waiting for you, let no one take it from you. And it says, he who overcomes, overcomes this what? This time of trial, this hour of tribulation that's going to come upon the whole earth. Right. Now, I hope that I've explained something to you that you've never understood before, the viewing audience, or at least someone in the viewing audience, because this is clearly Yeshua speaking to the church, explaining to the church, I'm going to preserve you through this hour of trial, so hold on to what you have. Let no one discourage you. Let no one change your mind. Let no one bring you down. Because he who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of Yah. That is the best way I can explain that to you. Now, if you can get anything other than that out of that, I would really love to hear what you have to say. Now, going back over to 1 Thessalonians. We just basically broke down why we see the word remain here. That's why I went there, because this breaks down to you why the word remain here. Because it's about overcoming. And this is what Yeshua spoke about. Overcoming, remaining. So it's not a guarantee that you're going to survive this time.
That's right.
No, it's not.
But see, Elder, you got to explain also that you have to be a part of a certain group to be protected or to be kept. Because, see, the people that are going to be persecuted are the ones who are preaching and teaching the word of Yah that's written. It's not going to be the people that's dealing with, and when it says churches, don't let the word church confuse you, because the true church is Israel. And we're not talking about just the people, we're talking about what they believe and what they hold fast to. And Israel, by that being the church, and what distinguishes them as a church, is we embrace what's written, as opposed to make-believe, because there is no passages that will take you to any story regarding a rapture or you being taken up or taken away and then brought back, because basically that's the lie that's being told. You're going to be taken, the Messiah will come get you, take you, put you, and then get you again and bring you back.
But see, remember now, let's read something.
Okay, where you at?
Turn to Matthew, the 22nd chapter.
Okay.
Matthew, the 22nd chapter, Elder.
Yeah. We're going to start at verse 23. Now remember, the Pharisees and Sadducees was always coming to Yeshua with a bunch of garbage anyway. But to test him. But let's read this.
Where we at?
22.
Matthew 22, starting at verse 23.
Okay.
It says, the same day came to him who? Yehoshua, Yeshua, to him the Sadducees, which say that there is no resurrection. Stop. Now what we're talking about here also is resurrection.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
That's what it is.
Because there are a lot of, some believed in the resurrection, some did not.
That's right.
These did not believe in the resurrection.
That's right.
They didn't believe in the resurrection.
That's right.
But the word resurrection, which the Greeks used, is 386 in the Strong's Concordance. And it's right, and it's pronounced anastasis, anatasis. And it says a standing up again. It says literally a resurrection from death, individual, general, or by implication. Its author, or figuratively a moral recovery of spiritual truth. This is another part that when you just got through talking about,
Yes.
they say a moral recovery from spiritual truth. That means from a lie to the truth. But we know that they only go from lie to lie. That's why it says adding sin unto sin. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So here we go. It says, raised to life again.
Yes.
Resurrection, raised from death. That should rising again. Now, people think when it talks about the resurrection that it only occurred, or people only in what they call the New Testament knew about this. But let's look at something here. Turn to Job, the 14th chapter. And I'm going to start reading at verse 12. He says, so man lies down and does not rise until the heavens be moved no more. He will not awake nor be aroused out of his sleep. Now we know that, as you said, Elder, death refers to sleeping.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Here it's spoken about. This is Job in what y'all call the Old Testament.
Right.
It says, oh, thou wouldest hide me in Sheol or the grave. This is Job talking. It says that thou wouldest conceal me until thy wrath returns to thee. Now, Elder talked about the tribulation. You hear what Job just said? That thou wouldest conceal me until thy wrath. Huh?
That's right.
Huh?
Beautiful. That's
returns to thee. That thou wouldest set a limit for me and remember me. Then it says, if a man dies, will he live again? Then they just get through asking him about a resurrection.
That's right.
Huh?
That's right.
Again, he says, if a man dies, will he live again?
Right.
Then Job says, all the days of my struggle or my life, I will wait until what? My change comes. Huh? Thou will call, call from where? From the grave, the resurrection, as it's being talked about here. And I will answer thee. Thou wilt long for the work of thy hand. Huh? For now thou doest remember my number my steps, that thou do not observe my sins. Again, Job knew about the resurrection.
Right.
Huh? Now here, the Sadducees coming to him, asking him, is there a resurrection? But now let's continue to read. Let's go back to Matthew, the 22nd chapter. This is what they also said. They said, saying, Master, Moshe said, if a man dies having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. Now there were with us 7 brethren, and the first, when he had married a wife, deceased, and having no issuance, left his wife unto his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third unto the 7th. And last of all, the woman died also. Now here's the question that they asked. Listen to this. They said, therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the 7? For they all had her. Listen to what the Messiah said. Yeshua answered and said unto them, you do err, not knowing the Scripture, nor the power of Elohim. For in the resurrection they will neither marry, nor are they given in marriage, but are as the angels of Elohim in heaven. But as touching the resurrection of the dead, having yet not read that which was spoken unto you by Elohim, saying, I am the Elohim of Abraham, and the Elohim of Ishak, and the Elohim of Yaakov. Elohim is not the Elohim of the dead, but of the living. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
He letting them know. See, what Elder was talking about, this misunderstanding here about this rapture. Notice what it said. It said immediately what? After the tribulation of those days. But the resurrection was what? When Yeshua comes back and raises all those what? It says all those who died in what? Hamashiach first. In him. So they meet him in the air, and forever they will remain with him. Why?
And that's where they, for some reason, they believe that because it says, and they shall be with him forever, they think that he's going back up again.
Right.
Well, wouldn't it be possible for them to be with him forever if they're going to be resurrected? And at the same time, Yeshua don't proceed to go upward, but continue to come down to earth and begin to do what? Wage war, of course.
That's
but
right.
Then again, also immediately after that, what is he going to do? Well, he's going to set up the kingdom.
That's
so are
it.
you not going to still be with him? Yes, you are.
Yep.
So I don't understand why they believe to be with him forever means that he's going to go back up again.
Right, but they don't understand what they say when he going to be with them forever. Then that's when y'all's new covenant come into play. Oh, but you already under the new covenant, right?
Yeah, see, the thing is that we know that parts of the new covenant has taken place.
That's right.
But the fulfillment totally of the new covenant has not.
That's right.
Okay, all right. There's so many things here that we can go to,
Right.
and that we really need to go over and explain to the people that this rapture thing is nothing but the resurrection.
That's it.
And see, I think the issue here is not so much as to whether we believe it's going to be a resurrection or a rapture or whatever, but I think the difference here is when. Okay, we say that, by most teachings, we show a tribulation period. A tribulation period of 7 years, as they say. The reason why they call it 7 years is because it is explained as Daniel's 70th week.
Right.
All right, now, most people in the church believe either one of two things. They either believe that there's going to be a pre-rapture or pre-taking out of the church before Daniel's 70th week begins, or they believe there's going to be a rapture of the church at the midpoint of Daniel's 70th week. That's basically what we're talking about here. So we're talking about, in Christendom, people believing that there's going to be a rapture either before the tribulation or at the midpoint, which is 3.5 years of the tribulation. But no one is talking about a rapture or a resurrection, because that's what it is, after or right at the end of the 70th week. This is our contention.
Right.
Our contention here, viewing audience, is this, is that there is going to be a resurrection, what you think of as a rapture, but this resurrection is going to include everyone. That includes the church, basically. It's going to take place at the end of Daniel's 70th week,
Correct.
just before Yeshua or Christ brings in the new kingdom.
That's it.
That's when it is going to happen, and we're going to show you why. First of all, we know that there is no such word as rapture in this Bible.
Nope.
Nowhere.
And there's nowhere in this Bible does it tells us anywhere that the church is going to be taken out, or those who are considered Yeshua's, or who the Father has given him, that is going to be taken out at the midpoint of Daniel's 70th week. There's nothing that tells us that. Shaul don't even say that. Where does Paul tell us that the church, or those who belong to Christ, is going to be taken out of this world at the midpoint of Daniel's 70th week, or the midpoint of the tribulation? There is nowhere.
Nowhere. No.
I just don't understand how they keep putting or placing a time on it. Now, the only difference between what we believe and what most Christians, because most Christians believe that the rapture is going to take place at the midpoint. So basically, the only difference that we believe, that's in what they believe and what we believe, is a time factor. They believe it's in the middle. We believe it's at the end.
Let me say this, Elder.
Basically.
For the most part, a lot of Christians don't even understand the midpoint. So maybe you need to break down the midpoint.
Well, the midpoint is
Daniel's
70th week
70th
is just a tribulation period, a time, which consists of 7 years.
Right.
Okay. All right. Now, at the 3.5 year point, the middle, they believe they're going to be taken out, because the last 3.5 years is where all the trouble is going to come in. That's what Yeshua was speaking about when we just read Revelation 3 and 10, when it said about the hour of trial that is going to come upon the whole earth, the testing period, the trying time, the hour of temptation. This is referring to that 3.5 year period where the whole world is going to come under fire. You see, and what Yeshua trying to explain to them is, hold fast to what you have, because you're going to have to survive this. Because the whole point is what he just said: he who overcomes it, those who are alive and remain. If you remain, you overcome it.
That's right.
See, so that's the key here. Now, first of all, Elder went to the Old Testament. Did you not, Elder?
Yes, I
went
did.
to the Old Testament. All right. Now, I think one of the things that's important is for us to understand is that we have a resurrection, and we have people who are part of this resurrection. And we know that the resurrection is basically consists of two different types of resurrections, actually.
Yes.
The first resurrection, or those who are resurrected first, are those who are resurrected unto life.
That's right.
And the second resurrection is called the resurrection unto death. That is called the Great White Throne Judgment.
Yeah.
All right. So irregardless of whether you are a good person or you're a bad person, you're negative or you're positive, you're going to be resurrected.
That's it.
Okay. But what did Daniel say? And that's why we're going to hit the Old Testament again. Daniel said that there are going to be some that are going to be awakened to what? To everlasting what? Life. Or some going to be awakened to what? Everlasting contempt.
That's
So
it.
so let's maybe we ought to look at Daniel and begin to see what is being said here.
Daniel 12 too.
But you
Yeah.
know what, Elder? You had mentioned something
Uh-huh.
in passing
Uh-huh.
about the 70 weeks of Daniel.
Uh-huh.
Don't you think we should read a little bit of that after you?
Well, you want to read that?
Well, that's what I was trying to point out, because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't understand the midpoint. They don't understand there's a point, period.
Well,
So we trying to, take it from point A to Z.
right. Okay.
So
Well, Matthew 24 will explain about that, I believe. Matthew 24 is about Daniel's 70th week. It's about that tribulation period.
Right.
The time. So we can go there.
Okay.
If you
But
want
a
to.
lot of them have never really heard of the 70 weeks of Daniel, as you were saying. But if we could, I'm gonna read just a little bit of that.
Okay, well, you
We
go
go
there.
to Daniel 9,
Okay.
chapter 9, and
Daniel
I'm gonna
9.
start off at verse 24.
Okay.
Now, I'm gonna give you a little bit of background. When the children of Israel were sent into bondage into Babylon, there was a prophecy that was made about 70 weeks.
Okay.
But we know that the 70 weeks were dealt with years. In terms of time, we're talking about 490 years.
Okay, that's right.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm going to read this.
Okay.
Now, Daniel, they had been in captivity, and remember, Daniel rose to be the third leader in Babylon.
That's right. Under Nebuchadnezzar.
Right. It says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sin and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the visions and prophecies and anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Mashiach, the prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, which adds up to what? 69 weeks.
right.
Okay? The streets shall be built again. We know that when Ezra and Nehemiah went back to Jerusalem, that they built up the city again and the temple. Okay? This was after this, because remember, Daniel's prophecy was before this happened. See, people don't really understand that this book is not quite in order as to time frame. So when they reading something here and they go back and read, they scratching their head because they really don't understand. But let's keep going. It says, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The streets shall be built again, and the walls even in times of trouble. And after 62 weeks, shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Here's where the 7 years come in. Because when we talk about 1 week, 1 week is equal to what? 7 years.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblations to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and determinate shall be poured upon the desolate. Now, That's what Elder was speaking about when he talked about the 70 weeks. If you really want to understand this, you got to go back and read it. Not only read this, but go back and read Ezra and Nehemiah,
Right,
because that's the time period that's being talked about.
Exactly.
And then in some parts of this, it's being talked about in the Apocrypha, which is not in a lot of Bibles, but is relevant. This is those are relevant things to the story,
Exactly.
because people see only 3 of the beasts and not the 4th one, which was taken out in the Apocrypha. Then you can begin to understand the whole story again.
Okay. All right.
And you
All right.
say Daniel 12.
Yeah, Daniel 12, 2.
Right. Daniel 12. Daniel 12. Okay. We see here Daniel is getting ready to be shown something by the Most High. And it's something concerning what we're talking about.
Right.
It is concerning what we call the end time.
Yes.
Okay. Daniel 12:1 says, it says, at that time, Michael, or Michael, the archangel, shall stand up. It says, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. That's referring to Israel.
That's correct.
And there shall be a time of trouble. Okay, a time of trouble, hour of trial, hour of tribulation. When the whole world we're going to come under fire. It says, such as never was since there was a nation. Even to that time. And at that time, your people shall be delivered.
Yes.
Your people shall be delivered. Okay? Your people shall be delivered. All right. It says, everyone who is found written in the book. It says, everyone. This says everyone. It's not talking about part of people here. It says everyone who is found written in the book. All right? It says, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth, and we say sleep is what? Is be dead. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Shall awake. That means they shall what? Be resurrected. Or stand up again, as in your definition that you gave us, Elder. It says, some to what?
Everlasting life.
Some to everlasting life. We said that. And it says some to what? Shame.
And everlasting contempt.
And everlasting contempt. So whether you be eventually, what's going to happen is whether you be positive or negative, you're going to be resurrected.
Right. That's
one way or another.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, now, it says, also here, to finish this up here, it says, those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Okay, all right, now, the Father begins to explain here to Daniel about this end time and about this resurrection that's going to take place. All right? But it also talks about a time of trouble. All right? Okay, all right. Now, in its finality, as you read throughout this whole chapter here, you see the Daniel begins to be a little bit befuddled by this because the Father is explaining certain things to him and he don't quite understand. Okay, all right. Let's pick up here. Let's pick up here in verse 7. It says, then I heard the man clothed in linen. In fact, let's go back. Let's read the whole thing. Might as well go through that whole thing here, because I want to break it up. Okay, so we're going to kick back in at verse 4. So the Father speaks to Daniel and he says here, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Then I, Daniel, now Daniel is speaking. He says, then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on the riverbank and the other on that riverbank. So we see a river, and there's a man, apparently there's a man in the midst of the river, and there's one man on one bank, and there's another man on the other bank. It says in 6, and one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters. This was one that was on the river, or in the middle, so to speak. So one, he said to him, he said, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Then I heard the man clothed in linen, the man in the river, who was above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever, that it shall be for a time. Then it says a times and a half a time. A time, a times, and a half a time. Now, what in the world is he talking about?
Talking about 3.5 years.
Okay.
That's what he's talking about.
Okay. So we know here that a time is 1 year.
1 year. That's right.
Well, then it says times, which is plural, that's 2 years.
2 years.
And then it says half a time, and that means a half a year. So if I say 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1/2 equals what? 3.5 years. So this time of trouble is going to be what? 3.5 years long.
That's it.
That's what we call the midpoint.
Right, exactly. It says, and when the power of the holy people has completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. Okay? It says, although I heard, I did not understand. So Daniel is saying that he received this information, but he didn't quite understand what it was really saying.
That's right.
He says, though I heard it, I did not understand. Then I said, my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? So Daniel's speaking here. What's going to be the end of this all? Because I don't understand it, but what's going to be the end of it? And Yah said to him, because now the Father's speaking. He says, and he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from that time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, so from that time, so from the time in the future, Daniel, from the time that the daily sacrifices are taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So what the Father did, the Father didn't go into what shall be the end of these things, but he told him, your starting point, that you're going to count these 3.5 years, is going to be when you see what is called the abomination that is called desolation. When the sacrifices are taken away, and there's going to be a claiming of world power and world authority by this one man, who we call the Antichrist. System is set up and declaring himself as being all-powerful. From that time, in the temple, that's when you begin your count of the time, times, and a half a time, or your 1,290 days. Same thing. Because the 1,290 days is your 3.5 years, which is the same as your time, times, and a half a time.
That's it.
So the Father here now explains here, it says, well, listen to 12. It says, blessed is he who waits and comes to 1,335 days.
Right.
Now, what that is telling us here is the 1,290 days is your 3.5 year period.
Right.
But there's going to be a spacing here. I think that's about, what, about 45 days?
Right.
There's going to be a pause. There's going to be a pause between the 1,290th day and the 1,335th day. So something is going to be going on here, and at the end of that 1,335th day, then the kingdom will be set up.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go into what's going to happen during that time because we're talking about the resurrection here. However, what's said here in verse 13 is very important. It says, and the Father is speaking here. He says to Daniel, but you go your way, Daniel, till the end, for you shall rest. In other words, the Father is trying to explain to Daniel, you go on and do what you have to do. You're going to die. But he says, but I will arise your inheritance. You will arise to your inheritance. So the Father is telling Daniel. I mean, Daniel is very, very fortunate here because he's one of the few individuals that the Father is telling him that he's going to be resurrected to life. He's got it made.
Yeah.
The Father says here, but you go your way, Daniel, to the end, for you shall rest, and you will arise to your inheritance.
He done made it.
At the end of the days. At the end of the days. Now, in the end of the days, the end refers to that 3.5-year period.
Yeah.
Because that is the end of time. That is the whole topic that we're talking about. That 3.5-year period. It says, to the end of the days. All right, now, what's important here now is to understand Hebrew culture and how Hebrew culture is broken down. In Hebrew culture, whether we're talking about a particular event, there's a beginning of an event and there's an ending of an event.
Right.
Now, in Hebrew culture, even in the beginning of an event is broken down into 3 parts. And the ending of an event is broken down into 3 parts.
Yeah.
The beginning of an event, the first part that is broken down into is called the beginning.
Right.
So what we're literally saying here, viewing audience, is that for every beginning, there is a beginning of a beginning.
Yeah.
There's also the second part, which is a midpoint. So there's a middle point of a beginning. And then there is the third part, and that is the end. So it is the ending of the beginning. So any beginning has a beginning point of a beginning, it has a middle of a beginning, and it has an ending of a beginning. Same as it is with the what? With the end point of any situation or any event. There's a beginning of the end, there is a middle of the end, and there is an end of the end. That's important because this is the context that these people wrote. They wrote within the context of beginning and middle of ending of whether you're talking about the beginning point or middle point or ending point. It says right here, in the end of days. All right, now, Elder, could you look up in your Strong Concordance right here? Could you look up the word end for this particular passage? For Daniel, the 12th chapter and the 13th verse, could you look up the word end? What we want to know is what context was this word end written in when it was originally written? What were they really saying? And what's important here is to always remember that we know we're talking about the end point, 3.5 years.
7093 is in the Strong's Concordance.
7093? 7093.
Right. 7093. Just a second. I have it for you.
And I think that's part of the problem is that most people don't understand that.
It's called Kates.
Kates. Okay? Right. The word here is Kates. So we know this. What do we know, Elder? We know that when this was originally written, Daniel the 12th chapter, the 13th verse was originally written. The Hebrew word, and it is a Hebrew word because this was written in what? Hebrew
That's right.
The Hebrew word that's written there was the word what?
Cakes. Right.
That's what that's saying. That's saying the word cakes was used here
Right.
in its original form. So what was the thought behind cakes? What was the thought behind the word cakes being used here?
It says an extremity.
An extremity.
That's right.
An extremity. So since we're talking about 3.5 years, we're talking about an extremity of those 3.5 years.
Right.
Am I right, Elder?
That's right.
So 3.5 years, we're talking about an extremity part of those 3.5 years. Continue, go ahead.
Yes. After, and then it says, after utmost border.
Oh my goodness. It says after what, Elder?
After utmost.
At the utmost border?
Right. That goes along with extremity.
The utmost
Right.
border.
Right.
That means if it's the border, if I take one step, then I'm over into something else, right?
That's right.
Okay, so if utmost border, now would that make you think that we're talking about the beginning of this 3.5 year period, or at the end of this 3.5 year period?
The very end.
At the very end, because is that not the most extreme part?
That's it.
Is that not the utmost border?
Yes, it is.
So what we're saying here, correct me if I'm wrong here, Kazakio.
Mhm.
This is saying, since we're talking about this 3.5 years of time, because that's the end of days, it says that at the most extreme, utmost border, or at the utmost part, at the extremity of it, we're talking about at the very end of this 3.5 year period.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
So that means by Hebrew thought, we're talking about the end of the end.
That's what
That's
we're
right.
talking
Not the
about.
beginning of the end, not the middle of the end, but the end of the end. Is that right, Elder?
That's correct.
The end of the end. And this
That's
is what
it.
the Father told Daniel. Is that right?
Yes,
And this is
indeed.
in what? In the Hebrew. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We just want to establish that in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Because that's what Yah told Daniel.
Yeah.
That's what was said.
Yeah.
Or maybe, being honest, you never really looked at that.
No.
Maybe you never studied that.
No, you haven't.
Maybe you didn't realize that.
Well, if you don't understand Hebrew culture, if you don't understand that you're a Hebrew, you wouldn't understand this anyway.
Absolutely.
Because you keep thinking in English.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the Father is basically saying here, bottom line, is that Daniel, go about your business, do what you have to do. You're going to die, but I'm going to what? I'm going to resurrect you. I'm going to raise you. I'm going to resurrect you in the end of the end.